I've got questions for you, Dan. What would any of these grants entail for us? Does that mean that we begin down the road of developing a new app on a new language?
Um, yeah, so I suppose that's two questions. What would it mean for us? And like what would we do with it, each of us as individuals and the whole community? And I'm not totally sure yet. Like the general answer is figure out ways to help Optimism, because Optimism is a community that it is well funded and it's highly aligned in our like goals and missions, and like very well structured system where it's basically, if you can help Optimism, then Optimism is willing to provide funding with you. And then in addition to funding too, it's also just there's way more people. There's a lot of great builders, lots of great tools that are built with Ethereum and EVM. So there's a lot of opportunity basically when we can figure out how to help Optimism. I don't know exactly how it will work. Like if Retro PGF, we can apply as Eden Fractal, if that'd be a good idea. Or if like maybe Perry, you could with DNews, excellent website. Maybe you could also orient DNews to also include information on Optimism or Ethereum if you're interested. Just an example. Or maybe some of the stuff that Eric is doing with the Center for Governance or Alien Worlds can be also helping or also just explaining how it helps Optimism or collaborating with Optimism more. So I don't know if it's like I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do it. If it's like a whole group thing, I think we should definitely collaborate with Optimism as Eden Fractal. But as far as like raising funding and how to best do it, I don't know if that's more like Pomelo, or we each have our own projects, or it's like a whole community thing, or maybe some combination of both. And then with regards to your second question about like developing the tool set, so that was in scope of the proposal that I made with Vlad and Das, and Rosemary too, of course. So I've been coordinating with Vlad and Das, and in that proposal that I shared, that you can find the link in the Eden Fractal Telegram chat. It's quite long, and right in the beginning, it says that part of the funding that we're requesting is dedicated towards building the initial tool set to bootstrap Optimism Fractal and build and enable anybody to host fractals, to start fractals, to play fractal consensus games and so forth on EVM blockchains. So I've scoped that with Vlad and Tadas, and Tadas has been building Firmament for a while. The Firmament's similar because it works on EVM, but also Tadas is just building like a simple smart contract. I don't know exactly who's going to do what role yet. Oh, basically what Vlad, Tadas, and Tadas, if you want to speak out on this, if I'm getting anything incorrect or you want to add any more details, then of course feel free. But in that proposal, like we scope out a bunch of like critical milestones about what the technical deliverables will be. And that's like basically a basic front end that works with EVM. Well, first, actually, there's a basic smart contract that enables communities such as Eden Fractal to post consensus results from our social consensus games or Optimism Fractal social consensus games onto the Optimism blockchain, which is called the OP mainnet. Or that could also work with different Ethereum based blockchains as well, or EVM based blockchains as well, I should say. And then there's also in that scope of the proposal a front end as well, where people can vote on it, similar to how we have a front end for the Eden Fractal. So I think that that whole tool set, I think the total timeline for the technical deliverables, if the grant gets approved from the Grants Council, which would be in like a week or two, I believe I'd have to look at it again. I think it was like 12 weeks or like something like 3 months or so. That's when Vlad had said that they could finish that initial tool set. And that wouldn't include all the tools that we're building now. That would be just for the first season, this first iteration, which would enable us to bootstrap the Optimism Fractal. And at that point, I think we could also start posting the consensus results for Eden Fractal onto Optimism as well. And then from there, we can also do future developments.
So I think when you look at this grant idea, there's whether you go for the big grant or do you paint the picture and break it up into pieces. And it depends on who the grant people are and how they look at things. Because to me, the function is create an integrated workflow that implements the fractal methodology. Number two is create a tool that implements that workflow, even though we're not necessarily doing it in that order, we're doing the pieces. But if you think about grant-wise, here's a reason for why we're doing that. It consists of 4 pieces: develop the workflow, develop the tools, test the tools, and distribute and implement the tools. So those are, is that 1 grant or 4 grants? It really depends on the organization. They can tell you what they like better. For example, if you're doing U.S. government, they're going to want to, well, how do we know the workflow is any good? Do that first. If you like that, then we'll fund. the tool. If we like that, then we'll fund the testing, then we'll do the distribution.
Yes. Great points, Eric. I agree, and thank you for sharing your insights as always. And yeah, just to provide a bit of clarity, because I don't know how much I went over the proposal that we made so far. Like I kind of briefly introduced it last week, and then kind of just mentioned it this week and shared the screen briefly. But basically, what we have right now is a proposal to the Optimism Grants Council to build the initial tool set that I just explained right now, and then also research for future developments of the tool set, and then also to host and start the Optimism Fractal community, a new Fractal community basically, and to host the first season of Optimism Fractal, in which case I'd be hosting it, and I'd be working with Rosemary as well to build like an Optimism Fractal brand, Optimism Fractal website, a welcome guide, and so forth, so we can introduce it to the community. So several of those different things you mentioned there, Eric, as far as like different value propositions, those are already included in the proposal to some extent for starting the Optimism Fractal. And then, perhaps if you wanted to apply or somebody else wanted to apply for the educational, the academic grant, that could also be providing more of the value propositions in another way that they're looking for as well. And then we can explore all sorts of different ways too, because they have lots of different grant opportunities and like missions that we could apply for and stuff like that, as well as just the retro PGF. It's basically just there's 200 people or so who are making the decision about how to allocate funds, and basically communicating with them, networking, and figuring out what they want most to provide the most value for their ecosystem.